So the new Toxic Avenger reboot has finally been released in theaters, where you can watch Peter Dinklage in a tutu mutate into a superhuman vigilante and fight corporate corruption and lop punk rockers' heads off with a radioactive mop. So let me ask you this, is that something you want to watch? By the way, this is going to be mostly a spoiler-free review, so let's get right into it. Peter Dinklage plays Winston Gooze, a widowed janitor with a terminal illness who is transformed by toxic waste into the Toxic Avenger. He battles his corrupt employer, BTH, run by Garbinger, played by Kevin Bacon. The company, BTH, promotes healthy lifestyles on the surface, but ironically is pumping toxic waste and radioactive materials into the city and the waters, causing the spread of illness, disease, and strange mutations. One of the questions constantly running through my head was whether a more polished, higher budgeted remake like this one can truly honor its gritty cult film roots. Because part of the charm and fun of the original Toxic Avenger films from the 80s was that they were intentionally made to look shoddy, cheap, lowbrow. They had this gritty, do-it-yourself, homemade style approach to the filmmaking that really served the irreverent, dark, satirical tone and gave those films that edge, that grit, and that anarchic quality that you're not going to get when you have a higher budgeted movie like this with more established actors like Peter Dinklage, Kevin Bacon, and Elijah Wood. You know, if you have more money on the table, you want to go a little bigger and more refined. This film does try to approach the characters and the story with more heart and humanity, and is very less cynical than the original Troma movies. You know, the original Troma movies are just completely anarchical and cynical. Nobody is safe in a Troma movie. Troma goes after everyone. The city government, the politicians, the citizens, police. Everyone's, you know, a potential scumbag in a Troma movie.
Gentlemen, I think we have a deal. Yeah.
In this remake, that's not entirely the case. You have more characters you can get on board with. Peter Dinklage gives us a more humanized character than the Melvin character from the 1984 Toxic Avenger. His Winston Gooze, in an obvious pun, right? Gooze. And one thing I can say about this remake is that it is not subtle. The humor is blunt and in your face, and in that sense does honor the Troma spirit. But Peter Dinklage is always fascinating to watch. He portrays Winston Gooze with real humanity and real heart and real emotion. He's given a subplot with his stepson, played by Jacob Tremblay. Kevin Bacon and Elijah Wood are really hamming it up as the Garbinger brothers. In another obvious pun, right? Garbage, Garbinger. Kevin Bacon, of course, is really good at playing a villain. It's no different here. He's great. He's given us some really sleazy, unsettling characters over the years. But Garbinger is probably his most cartoonish role that I've seen him play. He plays this greedy, sleazy, narcissistic character, often just staring at himself obsessively in the mirror, checking his vitals daily while the city goes to shit. Kevin Bacon is great. He's over the top as he should be and matches the tone perfectly that this movie is going for. Elijah Wood is equally weird and deranged and really going for it as well. He looks like he walked off with Tim Burton's set and has that exaggerated gothic aesthetic to his entire appearance, where he has that kind of like classic Universal Monsters look to him. He looks like Renfield from Dracula. Let's talk about the Toxic Avenger character himself, who is voiced by Peter Dinklage, although Dinklage is not in the actual physical suit. The movement artist Luisa Guerrero is the person in the suit, which in that way honors the original Toxic Avenger movie, which changes actors once the Melvin character mutates into the Toxic Avenger. I do appreciate how director Macon Blair director insisted on using practical effects and a physical suit to honor the analog roots of the franchise. Just like the original design, the face is asymmetrical and features an enlarged, mutated left eye. But here in the new design, the eye has a more robotic appearance, which looks like it may have some special powers. The costume still includes the iconic pink tutu and melted janitor's uniform. Most iconically, he still wields his trusty mop, which is now radioactive and glowing, while still gritty, grotesque, and gooey looking. It looks a little more cartoonish than the original design. The humor and dark satire here is more self-aware in its critique of corporate greed, corruption, and specifically the healthcare system. You do get some pretty raunchy jokes and sex jokes. There's some full frontal nudity that was unexpected, and those scenes and parts I felt were most in keeping with the Troma brand of humor. Overall, I think this modern redo of the Toxic Avenger works more in its parts than as a whole. I think I enjoyed the marketing campaign for this movie more than the actual film. For example, I loved that first teaser about the Miss Meat fast food chain, and that was one of the funniest satirical segments that wasn't even in the movie. It was just part of the marketing campaign. Also, along with the standard trailers, they also released a retro style trailer for the film, which really captured that grungy grindhouse style of the original Troma movies. And while I was watching the actual movie, I kept thinking how much I would have preferred to see the analog version featured in the retro trailer. That would have been a lot cooler and more in style with what I want to see in a Toxic Avenger movie. As crazy as the movie gets at times, there was nothing in it that crossed lines, that offended my sense of taste, and I was like, ooh, I can't believe they did that. The cast and performances are good, but that's really all I could say. Even the action scenes, as wild and wacky and over the top as they get at times, they still felt obligatory, like the movie had to put those ridiculous scenes in there to honor the Troma brand, because that's what Troma does, rather than the film itself just saying, let's go for it. So everything felt like an obligatory effort and lacked that edge, that kind of shock value that I'm seeking in a Troma movie. This film just didn't give it for me. So out of 5 stars, I would give this one 2.5. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Toxic Avenger remake. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and whether you think this remake is better or equally good or not as good as the original movies in the series. Let me know. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate all the engagement and look forward to seeing you next time here.